All right, everybody, let's take a look at this example here and see if we can figure out what's going on in modulation land. So hopefully you've already taken a crack at the first phrase, because that's what we're going to unpack here. So here we should be able to see our first phrase. Let me see if I can bigify this a little bit. So there's the first phrase of the music here. This sounds like this. Get to a nice cadence there. And hopefully you're starting to also get a real feel for musically the benefit of these cadences in, spoiler alert, another key. We sort of talk a lot about the idea that, but the only two kinds of cadences that we really have are authentic cadences on 1 and half cadences on 5. That seems like it's very limited, but if you realize that the fact that those can happen in a number of different keys brings a lot of freshness to the musical texture. So with that in mind, let's sort of look at what we've got here, not just cadence-wise, but key-wise. So we know we start in F major. So let's really quickly just sort of pop the key network of F major. So we know F major is at the center here. We're looking for, since F major is a 1 flat key, 2 flat keys and no flat keys. So C major is our no flat key, and B flat major, BB, caps lock. B flat major is our 2 flat key. And then if we hop down here into the minor land, what's our 2 flat minor key? It's G minor. D minor is with F, and then A minor is with C. So that's the network of keys that we want to be keeping in mind here. These are the keys that we could possibly go to, and that's true whether we're looking at a pivot chord or an altered chord modulation. We want to sort of figure out which one we're looking at, but that network of keys would be consistent for both. So we start in F. So the first thing we always want to do is to get a clear feel of where we go. We want to look at the cadence, because remember, a modulation, whatever technique it is, pivot or altered, it affects the modulation, but the cadence confirms it. The cadence confirms what key we're in. So we can always go to the cadence to find out. So right here at the end, we've got a cadence, and our cadence is on an A, C sharp, E chord, A, C sharp, E. So we know we're not cadencing in F major. So we want to think is, which of the keys that are closely related to F could have an A, C sharp, E chord? Just write A, C sharp, E here because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel good, people. A, C sharp, E. Which of these keys could have A, C sharp, E as a cadence point? Meaning, like I already said, 1 or 5 in that key. Authentic cadence on 1 or half cadence on 5. So we should be able to go through really quick and say B flat major certainly is not going to have an A major chord as 1 or 5, right? That's not going to happen. C major, the people's key, that's not going to have A major as 1 or 5, right? That would be C as 1 or G as 5. What about G minor? A is what in G minor or in any G key? It's 2, so that's a no. And A minor, that should be pretty, that one's should be pretty clear too. Pardon my elbow on the keyboard here. That's how badly I feel about A minor as an option, because we sure could have an A chord as a cadence in A minor, but it wouldn't be A major. It would be A minor, which leaves us with D minor. And so if we have an A chord at a cadence in D minor, what kind of chord is it? A in D is 5, right? So that makes this, what kind of cadence? Makes it a half cadence, right? The other clue here, the other clue that we're looking at D minor as our key here is that the presence of the note C sharp. Now, C sharp is certainly not in the key signature of D minor, but what important functional role does it play? It's the leading tone of D minor. So I'm just going to write C sharp equals LT of D minor. How about that? Powerful stuff, right? So C sharp is the leading tone of D minor. That should be pretty helpful for us as we think about the key. So we know that at some point we go to D minor. And so now our question is, can we find the point at which we modulate? So we're going to D minor. We're getting to a half cadence. What clues do we have about where the modulation happens? Well, the first thing we can do is keep that leading tone in mind and look through the music and see if we can find where we first encounter a C sharp, which is right there on beat 1 of measure 2. So we know that by that point, we're going to be in D minor, right? So we know at this point, look at that leading tone motion, C sharp to D. We're in D minor. So our question then becomes, are we looking at an altered chord modulation or a pivot chord modulation? And we want to keep those things distinct. So this C sharp chord, this chord with the C sharp, what functional role does it play in D? It's the dominant of D minor, right? This is the dominant chord. So what we want to keep in mind then is when we look at the dominant, the modulation happens in different places depending on if we're looking at pivot chord or altered chord modulation. If we're looking at a pivot chord modulation, where does the dominant happen in relation to the pivot? Right? The dominant comes right after the pivot. So if we're in a pivot chord modulation, here's the dominant, this would need to be our pivot chord, right? If we're in a pivot chord modulation, this is our pivot chord. And so we can quickly look and say, okay, is this shared between F major and D minor? So let's look. What do we have here? We've got, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try. See if this works. B flat. This is the worst idea I've ever had. B flat. We've got G. I'm building this upside down, and I hate everything about it. But watch. There we go. Look, I got it to stack. So we've got C, E. We're actually missing G, but G's the fifth, so we miss by fifth. We miss those sometimes. So we've got a C, E, G, B flat chord. And so what we want to think is, what's the key signature difference between F major and D minor? Oh, actually, there is none. So right off the bat, we're probably saying, yeah, this is totally shared, right? None of these notes are different between these two keys. However, my question to you is, in the key of D minor, would we ever see this chord? If we were in D minor, if we said by some miracle down here that we were in the key of D minor at this point, right? If we're in D minor, what would we label C, E, G, B flat as? We would label that C is 7, right? But this certainly isn't the leading tone 7 because this is a major triad. We would end up having to label this 7, 7. But that 7, 7, right? Not the diminished 7, 7, right? Not this 7, right? The more familiar one. Because it's a major chord, so it gets a major triad. And that's not something that we see. We don't use this 7 chord like that in D minor. So what we want to think about with this idea of shared chords is that we decide what's shared by how we use it. And in D minor, we don't use C natural like this. We use C sharp. So this is not a shared chord, right? It is not a shared chord. The other thing that can help us know that this isn't a good shared chord is that this is the dominant of F. So it sort of really pulls that way. You can use 5 as a pivot, but it's not always ideal. So if that's the case, if this is not shared, this is not a pivot, that means that we are looking at an altered chord modulation. And in an altered chord modulation, where do we put the modulation symbol? It goes on the dominant chord, right? It goes on the dominant. So here we can label both sides, right? So we're in F major, right? This whole opening thing. F major is our home key. Oh, no. And for this modulation, it's our old key, right? So that's how we want to keep it. And we know we're going to the key of, as I already said, D minor. Now, even though it seems a little confusing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to label the new key first. I'm going to try to extend this, see if I can without screwing this up. Oh, no. Oh, no, everybody. I'm doing bad things here. This is not working the way. There we go. Nope. You know what we're just going to do? Watch this. We're just going to say undo, and I'm just going to put this on the outside. I really don't like putting it on the outside, but sometimes you have to. So I'm going to label this chord, this dominant chord, first. So what are the notes here? We've got A. We've got C sharp. Try to do this backwards. We've got E. We've got C sharp. And we've got A. Let's try to smush it. There we go. A, C sharp, E, right? And so in D minor, what do we call A, C sharp, E? We call it 5. And what inversion is this? It's 5/6, right? Because C sharp, the third of the chord, is in the bass. So there's 5/6 in D minor, right? Now, what did we say about labeling this in the old key? We said that the front side of the slash, right? The front side of the slash is the same as how we label it in the new key. So we know that this is 5/6 of something, right? Because the front side of the slash is the same as how we label this in the new key, right? 5/6 of something. So our question now becomes, how do we figure out the back side of the slash? How do we figure out this is 5/6 of what? Well, we want to think, we name the back side of the slash, the question mark part. The question mark is how we would call the new key in the old key. Question mark equals name of new key in old key. I know that seems really crazy, but we're going from F to D minor, right? So what in F major, what do we call D minor? What do we call D minor in F? Right? What Roman numeral do we put with that? In F major, what do we call a D minor chord? We call it 6, right? We call it 6. Let me add that on here. I'm just going to write 6, exclamation point, because why not, right? But it's minor, right? We call it 6. So we're going to call this 5/6 of 6, because that's the name we give to the new key, D minor, in the old key, F. So this is an altered chord modulation, and we figured out what the cadence is, and we did all of that through sort of some pretty crafty looking. So go ahead and take a look at the next phrase, and I'll see you on the other side.